Have you ever heard of The Federalist? It keeps popping up in my Twitter feed. I'm telling you, every time I see an interesting article, half the time it's from The Federalist. And I like these guys a lot, but it looks like big tech is trying to deprive them of money. And we all need money. I want to bring in now Ben Weingarten, senior contributor to The Federalist. Again, a great publication. But this is no joke. Google and NBC News giving you guys a hard time. Can you take us through it? What's happening?
Yeah, I think the very simplistic way to describe it is, look, the woke left is on a rampage right now. It's happening in our streets. It's happening in boardrooms. It's happening in Silicon Valley. And of course, big tech, we've always believed, and there have been any number of instances of big tech shadow banning, seeking to demonetize any voices that dissent against the progressive orthodoxy. And in this case, you had foreign collusion with a left-wing think tank based in the UK, NBC News, that is a competing legacy media company, working hand in glove then with Google to try to demonetize The Federalist, not run Google ads on The Federalist. Ultimately, their story changed a bunch of times as to whether or not they were going to demonetize or not and what the basis for it was. But the ultimate claim was because of the comments in the comment section on our site, which raises the question, well, look, Google owns YouTube. Have you ever seen the comment section on any YouTube video? If you can demonetize us for our comment section, I mean, Google should be demonetizing itself then.
You know, Google is so big, and I've heard this mentioned. Google, these tech companies, they really have to turn them into utilities or something. Imagine a power company that could deprive somebody of power if they didn't like them. You know what I mean? They're so big now. I think they've got to go. We should all own it. And I know that's not a very conservative way to think, but I think the time has come. Hey, can I ask you this? The situation in Atlanta, I find it stunning that the media aren't telling us some pretty basic things about this. Number one, I found out very recently, as in today, that the first officer who arrived, who found this guy asleep in the car, Mr. Brooks, do you know he gave him a warning? He just tried to give him a warning and told him, okay, go find a place to sleep. Have a good night. That actually happened. Everyone's saying the cops didn't have compassion. They had so much compassion, they wanted to just let this thing go at the very beginning. Did you know that?
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that fact, but I am aware of the way that the media has twisted this story to try to serve a narrative basically that flies in the face of truth. And as a consequence, it's very clear that cops around the country feel at very minimum that they're going to need to back off. And there was reporting yesterday, obviously, that Atlanta cops were basically walking off the job, not responding to phone calls. So the woke left that wants to defund or disband police departments, they may well get what they ask for, but it's a disaster for law-abiding citizens around the country. And it's a real disaster that it had to come to this in the first place because of a narrative that is not based in reality.
You know, the word narrative, I understand. We know what that means, but I didn't hear journalists use it up maybe about 10 years ago. They kept talking about narrative. And to me, when it comes to journalism, a narrative can be dangerous because a narrative is a story and you got to pick certain things that fit into your story, kind of like you just said, and ignore things that don't. When did narrative journalism become such a thing?
Well, look, I think that journalists, to some extent, have always been an activist. It used to be in the positive sense of basically holding people who were in power to account. But let's be honest about what the media is today. It's entirely biased, and it's about putting it basically, for most mainstream publications, it's about serving as the communications arm for the Democratic Party. Would they cover the stories that they choose to cover and put forth the narratives, to use that cliche word again, that they do? Would they act any differently if they were serving as the communications arm for the Democratic Party? I think it's very clear they have an agenda, and that agenda is to impose their worldview on us to get the policies that they want. And you see it quite clearly when you have someone like NBC News trying to snuff out a competitor. When did the media get in the business of trying to take out competing media companies? Aren't they supposed to be about free speech and open discourse and put out competing ideas and the best idea wins? Very clearly, they're not in that business anymore.
Yeah, no, it's wild what they tried here. You know, one thing, a lot of reporters will say, well, we like to speak truth to power. And number one, that kind of reveals a bias in and of itself. Like, we have the truth, they don't. I was once chased out of a journalism seminar for saying something like that. But I mean, those journalists who say, I want to make the world a better place, which sounds great, but that means the reporter shows up thinking it's bad and they have the skills and the wherewithal to improve it. They may or may not. Do you know what I mean?
I'll take it even a step further. Truth to power, they would say my truth, as if there's no such thing as objective truth. And truth to power meaning progressive power. That's how you translate it.
Yeah, the my truth thing. You're right. There used to be the truth. Now we all have our own version. Wild stuff. Ben Weingarten, we appreciate it very much. Senior contributor to The Federalist, a great publication. Please check it out. Take care now, okay?
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, you bet.